Hello there, and welcome to ZeroXP. We are a podcast looking to celebrate fandom one game, or in this case, one game series at a time. I'm Patrick, and I'm here with my co-host John, who's some around town referred to as the Hollow Man because he's dead on the inside.
Hi.
We're glad to have you here with us for our second episode of the Fable series. Today's episode is brought to you by Twin Blades Bandit Band-Aids, but we'll talk about that a little later. On today's episode, we'll give you the results of this week's fan poll and begin our journey with the first game in the series, Fable The Lost Chapters. We'll also be discussing the hero of Oakville's childhood, time in the guild, and battle with the Bandit King.
Okay, so before we get started, I just wanted to kind of address that this episode's going to be different than our previous one. We're kind of changing things up as we go, trying to fill things out, so this one's going to be a lot more conversational than it was in the past. We're going to be covering gameplay aspects, story, and really just kind of discussing the things that we love about the game. Again, we really want to hear from you in those regards, so please, if you have any thoughts, insights at all, feel free to find us on Twitter or send us an email, or we are actually, as of this week, launching our YouTube channel, so leave us a comment there. We'll have more information on that towards the end of the show. We don't like to bog things down early, but again, we're really hoping to form a good community here with you guys because we've had some pretty good feedback so far, so thank you for that. Also, I just want to make a quick note. If you are deciding to revisit the game along with us or possibly even playing for the first time, we are playing Fable Anniversary instead of the Lost Chapters, only because of the convenience of having it backwards compatible on the Xbox One.
And not having to switch out discs because it's on Game Pass.
So I literally want to start at the beginning here, only because the beginning of the game was such a big thing for me. You know, with the music and the opening narration, I get very nostalgic when I hear that. To me, it really set the tone for Fable as a whole. It was somebody telling you a story, as opposed to just dropping you right in the middle of the game. It set a feeling for me that I think has stuck with me, and the upside of that is when I go back and I revisit the game, regardless of how long that it's been since I've replayed it, it gives me that feeling of the first time, which I don't get from a lot of games, which is really cool to me. Was there any moment for you that really hooked you or makes you that feel that way or gives you that kind of nostalgia, Patrick?
Well, the thing is, I kind of came into this one a little bit differently because I had played Fable 2 first, and being a regular on the forums, I knew a little bit more what to expect from the Lost Chapters. The second that you hear Russell Shaw's soundtrack, I was immediately into it because it was a Fable game, and I already loved Fable.
So, I actually have a good question for that. When I go back and play it, weirdly, I go back to the traditional control scheme. Since you came in at Fable 2, do you play it with the Fable 2, Fable 3-esque controls?
I play with the Fable 2, Fable 3, just because it's easier to get back into it considering where I started. So, since you switched back to the original, which control scheme do you prefer?
Weirdly, I do prefer the Fable 2, Fable 3 control scheme, but I think because I want to have that nostalgic feeling, I tend to, as I said before, I use the old control scheme, but I do think that it was easier, more intuitive to use, you know, the 2 and 3, just because of the way the buttons were lined out. Okay, I was just curious, though. I think that's interesting. In fact, if you're listening and you want to voice your opinion, just let us know. I think that's kind of a neat thing. We probably won't do a poll for it, though. It's a quick answer. As we get into the game, we come upon Oakville, and we're introduced to it the very first thing, including our main character. The thing that really struck me about Oakville was the narration laid it out that it was a small town. To be specific, it said, "Deep in the forest of Albion lay a small town of Oakville, unchanged by time and untouched by the sword." So you get the idea that it's this little hamlet that's kind of cut off from the rest of the world. And they really did a good job of giving you that feeling because it's instantly you realize when you run into town that everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everything you're doing. And if you've lived in a small town in your life, that is very accurate. So I don't know if maybe that's why I identify with it so much, because we did grow up in a smaller area, but I don't know. I felt really tied to it from the beginning of the game. One of the things that I thought was really funny was your dad offers you 3 pieces of gold to go buy your sister a, birthday present. How much is gold worth there, you think?
Well, apparently a box of chocolates is what 3 gold coins is worth.
Okay, touche. Good point. So, I mean, I guess $5 if we were going $5 for 3 pieces of gold.
We don't know the quality of the chocolate.
That's true. Yeah. And we don't know the, I guess, quality of the gold. Who knows? But I just thought that was funny. Seems like a lot of money to do 3 good deeds. I'd take 3 pieces of gold, I guess, to run around town and do a couple chores for my dad. What are your thoughts when you come into it, Patrick? Anything?
Well, like I said earlier, it was familiar in a way, different, but it almost kind of felt like, compared to Fable 2, going back home, but just slightly different.
Well, and we don't want to get into it right now, but the history of Oakville and what takes place after Fable 1, so that would probably twist your outlook on it in comparison to what I have, which was my intro was just this sweet little town.
To be honest, it really wasn't any different. It was still a sweet little town. I just knew the fate that it had.
Okay, yeah. So do you have an affinity for Oakville at all? Because I know the community does.
I would say it's not as strong, but it very much feels like a traditional, beautiful Fable town.
Okay, I was just curious. That's pretty cool. So, immediately, if you play like I play, I check every nook, every cranny of every, spot that I can possibly find when I'm starting a new game, especially on my first playthrough, because I just don't want to miss anything. And immediately after you're given the task by your dad, you come across the guy behind the house, where he's cheating on his wife. And I always thought that was funny. Well, first of all, what decision did you make?
Well, of course, I told the wife.
Okay. It cracked me up because I don't know that a lot of people know, because I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and he had no idea that you can actually take the money from the guy and then still go tell the wife, so you wind up with an extra coin out of that.
I knew that, but as someone who majorly plays good, it still felt like the wrong decision.
Oh, yeah. Well, in the first time through, I didn't take the gold from him either, because to me, I assumed once you took the gold, that locked out another answer. But that, to me, was one of the brilliant moves of the game, was that it gave you the ability to do that. Whereas I think a lot of the games, especially at the time, would have just been like, cool, you made your decision, boom, that's it, cut them off.
One of the things I find funny is if you choose to take his money and not tell the wife, the guard runs up to you and calls you out for being an accomplice to adultery without ever telling her himself.
Oh, that is funny. I did find out, though, playing on my latest playthrough, because I thought I'd change things up a little bit, that even if you do tell her, he still says the same thing. So
really?
Maybe that's why. But I don't know. I always thought that was funny. That was probably my favorite part of the childhood quests anyways. I thought that task that they gave you was the most interesting. Of course, a lot of people have an attachment to the bear Rosie, and that there's an Easter egg in that, one of the later games. But that was probably my favorite thing from the childhood. I just thought that was really fun.
I agree. The only other thing I'm going to bring up from childhood is I am currently playing through evil while John is playing through good.
I'm playing through just based on the decisions I want to make.
Well, yeah. I'm playing through evil. So you get to the point where, you have the bully and he's threatening that kid, and it's really hard for me to be evil. But I just want you to know, I punched that kid for you, the listeners.
I'm sure they're very happy about that. So anyways, you get your chocolates from Murgo the Trader, and you go to find your sister. And I do want to point out, I think one of the things that really grips me about Oakville that makes it so distinct is that covered bridge. It's like the minute you see it in fan art, or I think probably when people come to think about Oakville in general, if they've played the game, is that covered bridge. It's almost iconic in a weird way. Yeah. But, you go and you find Teresa. She's in some random field with a scarecrow doing who knows what, because there's not really anything going on there.
She's just dancing around.
I guess. Maybe she was a little crazy from the get-go. But that's really where the game starts to take off. You've gotten your tutorial out of the way, and you get the little piece of dialogue from her talking about how she dreamed about these events that were happening at the time, and you weren't forgetting her birthday. And you give her the box of chocolates, and then she's like, oh yeah, I also dreamed about this massacre that's about to happen. I don't know. It's funny to me. But it also set up the fact that she's got some sort of hero ability, even though if we don't know all of the hero skill sets yet, she is definitely clairvoyant to some capacity.
This is where we find the hero hiding behind the fence. Bandits are just shooting people left and right with arrows. Teresa is nowhere to be seen. And like any child, I mean, you run to find your parents, so the hero runs to find his dad. And I really like this scene because as you're running through this town that, you kind of fall in love with really early on, it's all on fire.
Yep. My bridge.
The hero goes, he finds his dad. The dad is already gone. This is where you first meet Maze, and Maze gets you out of there immediately. And I always thought, that was a really sad and tragic part because the hero had no opportunity to mourn whatsoever.
Yeah, and earlier in the game, it had mentioned that your mother was supposed to be coming back, so we don't know where she is. You don't know about Teresa. And then to just find your dad literally impaled and, laying there to some stranger comes up, pulls you out, and Maze is a bit gruff with him. He has no sympathy for the moment. He's just like, hey, do you want to live? All right, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty tough.
Yeah. But, I mean, what was his options? You had to go with Maze because everybody else was getting killed.
Yep. Yeah. And the entire place was on fire.
Yeah.
So from there, we're introduced to the guild for the first time, which is probably one of my favorite places in all of Fable lore, all of the games. I don't really know why. I think it's just kind of a cool place to... It's almost like... for lack of a different comparison, the way Harry Potter fans love Hogwarts. It's like a feeling of kind of, ooh, I wish I could go to school there. I wish I could train there. I wish I could live there or study in a weird way. Do you share that at all? Or?
Yeah, I completely agree with the Harry Potter feel. I mean, it feels like a magical place with the time and the setting. But also, I came in at a time where really all you knew about was 3 heroes from Fable 2, so it was really fun going back to a place where there were a lot more heroes.
Yeah, that's... I could see where that would be. Again, it's always funny to me to hear the difference in your perspective from mine. But it's almost like getting a cheat sheet to a history book in a weird way.
A little bit Knights of the Old Republic-esque.
Yeah, I could see that. That makes a lot of sense. So at the guild, we're introduced to the guild master, also known as Weaver, but throughout the game continually referred to as the guild master. He welcomes you to the school, basically sends you up to your room where you meet another key character, especially in the development of our hero, named Whisper, who will go on to essentially become
frenemy.
I would say almost like, best friend / rival in a lot of ways.
Frenemy.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Whisper gets a bad rap. I really like it.
Oh, I agree with that.
So generally, with Fable lore, it's considered that heroes would only have one hero ability, and those manifest generally in magic or strength or skill, which your skill is like your, ability to shoot or be an archer, be accurate. Speed, yeah. And you find out that your hero has all 3, and that ties back a little bit to the Tales of Albion because those heroes are supposed to be specific to being from William Black's bloodline, but there's a little bit of a difference here in the original game. So at this part, after you've gone through your tutorials, you start to kind of take your heroes or your graduate classes, I guess I would say, your tests to see, if you're ready to go out on your own. And it's through that and your rivalry with Whisper and your training that you meet Thunder, who is Whisper's older brother, who is a hero. And he has a little bit of both, too. He's a hero of strength, but also I guess he has the ability to call down lightning.
Yes.
Thunder's a little bit less of a likable character in comparison to Whisper.
He's definitely a bit hardened and full of himself for sure.
The backstory on him was pretty cool, though.
They come from a small nation of island that separates Albion and Aurora, which we'll get to in Fable 3. Thunder and Whisper were leaving for Albion, but on the way, the ship was attacked by a kraken and destroyed. This is where Thunder took Whisper and he swam all the way to Albion. After arriving in Albion, Thunder made a name for himself, becoming champion of the Witchwood Arena.
So essentially he had to grow up quickly. He was responsible for Whisper and also kind of his own well-being from, I guess we would assume, a pretty young age.
Yeah, I mean, even though he's got a large ego and a jerk, he definitely is a really good big brother to Whisper, but also a parent figure, I would say. And, this is where you feel bad for Whisper because Thunder's already got a really big name, and she has to live up to his expectations, not only public perception, but also he's pretty hard on her.
So in order to graduate from the guild, you end up fighting Maze, just as, a sparring. I guess sparring would be a better word for it.
He just wanted to test your abilities.
Right.
Make sure you were ready.
And so, assuming that you beat him, you did get past the tutorial of the game, so congratulations. But from there, you start taking your quests, and the cool thing about the quests is some of them are good, some of them are evil, because you have the freedom of choice to do either. You also have the boasting system, which is neat, and I think it got lost in later games, right?
Fable was the only one that had the boast system, which I know me as well as many fans missed and would maybe love to see that in the future.
I think I liked it just because you could make a little bit of extra money early in the game, which came in handy. But your first quest, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, you've got to go fight the giant wasp queen at Lookout Point. And the reason that I did want to cover very quickly is less about the fight itself, but there is a sundial at Lookout Point that's dedicated to the Jack of Blades for, his major accomplishment at whatever took place there. And the thing that sticks out to me about that is it's interesting because we know who the Jack of Blades is, as we discussed last week. He's not a good guy. He's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Yet you have this monument to him, and I don't think it's an old relic. It may be, but the old kingdom was destroyed, so I would assume that anything that would have been dedicated to him out of force would have been destroyed there. So I think we're getting a glimpse that maybe he's got a little bit of, because of the time gap differential, like a celebrity status, which, how celebrities go, sometimes they can do these terrible things, but if enough time goes by, people will be like, oh, they're not so bad, because they seem likable. I just thought that was interesting. We also have an early quest at Orchard Farm, which furthers that rivalry between you and Whisper. And I think that was an important one just because, A, you had to trek there and it takes you through different regions to get you familiar with the world. But the rivalry, I think, again, it can come off as abrasive, but I think it's meant to be a bit more friendly.
Yeah, I mean, during this mission, she basically, just to challenge you, takes the opposite card no matter which decision you take.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's literally just to be like, hey, I can do better than you.
Yep.
We are going to take a quick break from talking about the game, and Patrick's going to give us the results of our poll from this week.
So first we wanted to know, do you prefer to play as good or evil? We threw this one up last minute, but we were happy to receive 24 responses. The results, 20 of you play through as good, 4 as neutral or just making decisions based on the decision in front of you. And surprisingly, 0 chose evil.
I wonder if that number would have been different if we had let the poll run a little bit longer. Because while I don't play as evil, I kind of, especially on my first playthrough of a game or when I'm revisiting it, I just make the decisions based on whatever I feel like making at the time.
Well, that's the thing is, I always go into these games thinking that, yeah, I'm just going to make decisions as I go, and they always turn out good, though. Like, I always make the good call. I never really seem to make the evil call.
Well, and there are those, well, not Fable specifically, but even I think starting with Fable 2, there's some gray area decisions that you make that you don't really know how they're going to turn out until you make them.
Now we're going to get into just a few of your comments. Nebraska Connell said, good playthroughs just feel much more rewarding. Someone who chose not to use their name said, I try to play through like I'm Obi-Wan. I have a feeling that they're not alone on that. And another anonymous listener said, it just fits who I am at heart.
Whoever made the Obi-Wan comment, same, because that's my dude. Cheers.
Next, we wanted to know, what was your preferred methods of making money? Rather than getting too deep into the results, especially because, for the most part, people were shifted in one direction anyways, we're just going to list the most popular answer. If you're not familiar with a lot of these, you can find it on the Fable Wiki, or if you're on YouTube, I'll post the link below. So trading, the most popular answer was sometimes. Stealing, never. Arena, never. Diamonds, never. Prostitution at the bordello, never. Pub games, you're pretty evenly split between never and sometimes. Trophy method, never. Emerald method, never. Buying and renting, strongly always. Do any of those surprise you, John?
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty surprised by all of it. Mainly because the trophy method I've used, since probably my first playthrough, and I discovered that on accident, just kind of playing around trying to make some money early. And I use that a lot of the time just so I can get, some medium gear early in the game. And then later I go on to use the Emerald method when I want to finish like a completionist run, like when I want to buy all of the equipment I can buy, all of the different weapons I can buy, because I just want to have everything. So I don't do it in a way that affects the game, but I do like to exploit a little bit just so I have a little bit of carrying around money.
Well, especially on whenever you played through it the first time, that's when I tend to bankroll a little bit earlier. But yeah, I was really surprised by these results because I thought the trophy method was something that pretty well everybody used. It's a very popular video on YouTube. There's plenty of tutorials on it. You only need 5,000 gold, I believe, to do that in Oakville, and it's an easy way to make money from pretty much the beginning of the game. And then the Emerald method, that's just bankrolling at that point.
Yeah, so I was pretty surprised by all of it. That was kind of a neat insight to it, because I think everybody, does the real estate thing, because that's part of the fun of the game in a way. Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited by our next poll. I hope to have it up in a few days, and if you're on the YouTube, by the time that this gets published, I'm hoping to have the link below where you can just click on it and take it. We'll also have that available on the Fable Fans Guild page on Facebook, as well as the Twitter account. For our next poll, we'll ask you to stack your favorite heroes from favorite to least favorite, and then we'll take the community opinion and we'll stack it against our own.
So once again, thanks for everybody who participated in the poll this week. Hopefully next week's is going to be a lot of fun. If you have any thoughts on that, let us know. But getting back to the story, after you've run a few side quests and kind of gotten familiar with some of the territories, the Guild Woods, and some different places along the way, you're sent to Bowerstone, which Bowerstone is the first, and I would say probably the biggest city in the game. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
But that's also because it's in different parts, or it's loads in different parts. Immediately once we're there, we're told that Maze is waiting for us because he might have information on our sister.
Yes,
okay. In the pub. And I don't know, I really like Bowerstone South. I feel like it's kind of, it's not too big, but at the same time, you do get the impression that it is part of a bigger thing than anything we've been to before.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. There's more shops and more things you can get into. Maze mentions that you need to go get yourself some better equipment, and that's kind of, he
wasn't wrong.
Yeah, it was a neat idea. Anyways, just to kind of push you into look into things a little bit more. But one of the quests we wanted to look at pretty early is it's called the Beardy Baldy quest. You want to cover that one?
Yeah, the thing with the Beardy Baldy, I mean, you knew it could go a few ways, but I was pretty sure it was going the direction that it was and that he didn't have a daughter. But it's, it's one of those missions it's kind of weird because even though you know where it's going and there's really no point to it, it's just fun and you love it anyways.
Yeah, because I think for me the reason that quest is strangely important for the game is because it sets up the humor behind it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the first humor moments, if not the first humor moment.
If you haven't played it and you're listening to this, well, you need to go play it. But, essentially this guy sends you on several different tasks that ends up making you change your appearance to look like an idiot.
Yes.
Yeah, and having a good laugh at that really kind of sets the tone for what you can expect. And I really think that that's where the game has a certain niche or, area where it's different than most
It's a very
games.
distinct humor.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that. There's a lot going on, and we'll get into more of some of the other quests later, but I just wanted to point a spotlight at that one in particular just because I have a bit of an affinity for it.
And just a bit of a side note, I'm on my, as I mentioned earlier, evil playthrough. The first thing I did was when I saw him, I walked up and I punched him in the face. I just wanted you to know that I didn't do that for you, the listeners. I did that for myself.
I bet that's pretty satisfying.
I think it's important to note that Barrowstone is the only town in the Fable series to, well, at least the original trilogy, and it was interesting from my aspect to start with 2, see how it was, then go to the prequel, and then finish it off by going to Fable 3 and seeing its future.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. That is interesting, and kind of a unique way to look at it. We will get more into Bowerstone, but we wanted to save that for a later episode. So after a few other side quests and running around and probably customizing your character a little bit, we're asked to escort a couple traders from Lookout Point to Barrowfields. We pick up a third one along the way or at least there's a choice to pick him up, who's been bitten.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we get into a little bit of lore on the Balverines, but I think we're probably going to save that for later, right? Once you get to Barrowfields, someone comes running out of a gate that says that Mace is looking for you again, and this time it's in your old stomping grounds of Oakville.
Pretty quickly, once you enter Oakville, you meet the girl who you either did or didn't retrieve Rosie the bear for, and she's talking to you, but the hero, you learn, has a little bit of PTSD. He has a flashback, imagines the fire, the bandits fighting.
I would imagine that's going to be really traumatic. I mean, especially since it's the first time you've been home since you left, and when you last left, your dad was dead and your family went missing.
Not only that, but you're going back to your old life where essentially after the bandit camp, he started a new life with new people, learned he was a hero, and everything before that was completely different.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a really impactful moment when I played through originally.
Yeah. Another thing that was interesting is, for the most part, it was rebuilt to its original form. I don't know if this was just because it's easier game design choice, or I like to believe that they loved that area so much that they rebuilt it in its original form. It's like essentially they rebuilt the town they loved, but expanded on it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So it's from there that we meet Maze at the pub in Oakville. He lets us know that he's hit kind of a dead end on the search for our sister, but in a nearby bandit camp that's run by an ex-hero, there's a seerist. She's supposed to be blind, but she can see the future. And that's part of why the bandits have been so successful lately, and he wants us to go talk to her and see if she can provide any insight as to where our sister may be. But before we head to the bandit camp ourselves, we've got a word from our sponsor for this week.
Ouch!
What's wrong, Patrick?
I've got blisters on me fingers.
Well, you're in luck. I have just the thing for that.
It's going to need to be extra strength. These things are poppers.
Here you go. Use these Twin Blades Bandit Band-Aids.
Twin Blades Bandit Band-Aids? I've heard those things can even hold scythe together.
That's right. I use Twin Blades Bandit Band-Aids for anything from a flesh wound to a Balverine bite.
Wow! Thanks. I'll be sure to use Twin Blades Bandit Band-Aids for all my bandaging needs.
Note, Twin Blades Bandit Band-Aids are not used or endorsed by Scythe. They may not stop bleeding and can actually increase the risk of infection. Twin Blade not liable. So from there, we're pretty much tasked with sneaking into the bandit camp. I've got to ask, because I'm not a very stealthy person, do you make it into the camp your first time, Patrick?
Never. I almost made it through once, but I tend to forget when I have a mercenary with me to let him go, because I made it near the end of the bandit camp, and he goes, "Hey, look, someone to attack," and charged him, and then the gates locked.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm not patient. I've never made it through on the first try, and I've actually learned over the years that if I just charge forward all the way to the end, I only have to sneak past that one guard who's lagging behind the other two. So after a series of tasks and getting into the bandit camp, I've got to say real quick that I really like the bandit camp area. Yeah, you know, there's a couple different sections of it, but it's actually one of my favorite places in the game, weirdly. I like the way that it's laid out, and I like that there's traders there, and it seems to be like a pretty comfortable place to be if you're a bandit.
And it's actually a really smart setup because, as you know, bandits, you're going to get attacked all the time, and by separating the areas, it really makes it where you have to be a hero to get through there.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's one of the cooler places in the game.
Once you're inside, you realize you can't just walk wherever you want. You have to get a elite bandit pass, and that can be achieved through a memory game, killing him, or through 1,000 gold.
Killing who?
The guy with the pass.
Oh, okay.
I got a question. Have you ever done the memory game? Because I've actually never went that route.
Oh, seriously? Yeah, no, that's pretty much the way I always go. What do you do to get in?
Well, I either pay him or kill him.
Okay. Yeah, no, I always play the memory game.
And then when you get through that area, you once again realize you can't just go around where you want. To get to the Bandit King, you have to figure out a way to get him to open his gate, because he's not just going to open it for you. John, which route did you usually go to get that gate open? There's actually 4 different ways, but we're not going to talk about all of them.
I didn't know there were 4. I always just killed the... there's some entertainment waiting for the Bandit King, you find out, and you want to set them free, which will cause a distraction to let you get in, and I always just kill the guard who's guarding them and let them go.
That's usually the option I choose as well, but this last playthrough, since I'm playing through Evil, I chose the assassin route, which basically they create a diversion which opens up the gate to let more bandits in to fight the assassins, and you can just run through. Once again, I'm playing through as Evil, so remember, I left those ladies in the cage for you, the listener.
I feel like when you do that, you should point at like some fictional camera and wink. So once the gates are open, we go looking for the Seerist in Twin Blade's elite camp. Twin Blade is the bandit king, so to speak. Twin Blade is a former hero turned bandit. He actually trained in the guild and graduated from it, but he hated the rules of the guild. He preferred to take what he wanted instead of just having to do the quests to get the things he wanted. He also disliked that a lot of the heroes seemed to only be doing their quests to gain gold, giving him almost a code of honor, and thinking that if you're going to act like a bandit, you should just be one. Eventually, he escaped to the forest, joined up with a small group of bandits, rose among their ranks, and then over time actually united the different clans and groups of bandits into one thing, therefore becoming the Bandit King.
Almost in some ways like he made his own guild. And then when you walk through the gate, it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the game. The hero walks in alone, surrounded by bandits that are just yelling and waving their weapons as you're walking up to Twin Blade.
Yeah, I think it's a good setting to set because the fight actually takes place in a ring of bandits. So it's kind of like an extreme fight club in a way. So after a battle with you and Twin Blade, assuming that you're successful, you do defeat him, and as you're about to behead the Bandit King, the blind, red-headed Cirrus emerges from Twin Blade's tent, stopping the hero in his tracks. And that's actually where we're going to end this week's episode, mainly because it's kind of a cool cliffhanger, even though you probably know the outcome.
We'd like to give a special thanks to those who helped us contribute to the show. ZeroXP logo is designed by Jameson Johns. You can find him at behance.net/Jameson Johns. Music by Odd Reference. Find him at facebook.com/odd.reference. Additional info provided by the Fable Wiki. You can find our podcast on Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer, as well as many other podcast sites. If you'd be so kind, like, subscribe, and review. Check out our YouTube page at ZeroXP Podcast for an added visual experience. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps YouTube know that you like the content and help other Fable fans find our product.
As always, if you have any questions, comments, constructive criticism, or even ideas for content on the show, please reach out to us. You can reach us on Gmail at ZeroXPpodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at ZeroXP Podcast. And a quick thanks to everybody that voted in this week's poll, and to those who have helped us get this show off the ground. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Douglas. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Mike. And as always, until next time, just stay safe out there. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.